Okay, good morning everybody. We're finally into the part of the class that I'm sure everybody's been waiting for. We're actually going to talk about the living things in the ocean. So before we do that, let's review real quickly the six kingdom classification system that we learned in regular biology. So there are six kingdoms, and we're going to focus on these two today, which include the bacteria, and then there are protists, fungi, plants, and animals. So you'll notice we're going to do the bacteria today. We'll do the protists tomorrow. Fungi don't really exist in the ocean because they can't handle the salty environment, so we'll go straight from protists to plants, which this includes all the seaweeds and the plants that are on the beach, and then of course the animal kingdom. Okay, if you remember from regular biology that there's the modern classification system includes these 7 groups: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. You guys are probably most familiar with the kingdom and the class. So the kingdom would be the 6 that I just showed you on the previous screen, and the class would be like groups of organisms. Like, you know that there are some animals that are mammals. You know there are some plants that are pine tree-like, okay? You know that there are some fungi that act like mushrooms, all right? And then the other one you're probably familiar with, the other 2 are genus and species. This is how we name organisms. So, for example, Ursus maritimus is the scientific name for a polar bear, whereas Balaenoptera musculosa is the scientific name for a baleen whale. Okay, so notice they're written in italics. The genus is capitalized, the species is not. Okay, that should all be a review. All right, so let's talk briefly about bacteria, and we're not going to focus on eubacteria or archaebacteria. We're just going to lump all the bacteria together. So their general characteristics: they are prokaryotic, so as a review, that means they do not have a nucleus. So their DNA is just free-floating in there. All bacteria are unicellular, which means it is one cell. They are all microscopic. There are about 5,000 species in the ocean. 2 important jobs that they do: 1, photosynthesis, which you'll see that a lot of bacteria, the last screen I'm going to show you, are blue-green ones. They do photosynthesis, so they put a lot of oxygen in the water. They are decomposers. That's why our trash stinks, right? Because they're trying to break down our trash. And bacteria are first classified by their shape. So let me show you what I mean by that. There are 3 shapes of bacteria: rod, which means they kind of look like a Mike and Ike or a Tic Tac; round, which is self-explanatory; and then spiral. So their scientific names are bacilli, cocci, and then spirilla. Okay, so Mike and Ike's, round, spiral, like spiral noodles or hairs, different things like that. Okay? All right, so now let's get to the function of these. So the decomposers is probably their most important job. Okay, whenever things die in the ocean and they're not eaten by other things, they have to be recycled. So that's what they do. It releases phosphates, nitrates, sulfates, and other things into the water, which then are either used by other organisms or recycled in their own right. Okay, most abundantly found in the bottom sediments, because as things die, if they're not eaten, they sink to the bottom. Okay, and if you guys have ever been in the Neuse River, you kind of know what I'm talking about. There's like a thick layer of gunky stuff that happens in the ocean as well. Okay, a lot of bacteria that are decomposers prefer warm, moist, dark, nutrient-rich areas, so that would be the perfect place for them. And then a lot of them, if they these that don't do photosynthesis, they can do chemosynthesis, which means they get their energy from chemicals. And the most common kind they do that is hydrogen sulfide, and that basically smells like rotting eggs. So if you've ever smelled like a boiled egg or a rotting egg, they have a lot of sulfur in them, and that's why a lot of bacteria smell bad. Okay? All right, our last screen for the day, blue-green bacteria. They're called cyano. That just means blue-green. And if you look at this example down here, oscillatoria, you can tell they have that real pretty blue-green color. Okay? These are the only bacteria that are photosynthetic. They have chlorophyll in them, so that's why they get their color. They are not considered algae because, as you can look in these individual cells here, there's no nucleus. Okay? Sometimes they may look bluer or redder depending on the pigments in them, and we'll talk about these when we do algae. Phycocyanin, phycoerythrin, this means blue, this means red. They can survive in a variety of conditions, so it can be cold, it can be warm, it can be salty, it can be less salty. They're very hardy. They can live in a multitude of conditions. Some are actually toxic if they're built up too much, and scientists believe that these are the first photosynthetic organisms on Earth. So that means they actually gave oxygen to the ocean, which is a very valuable thing, and then millions of years later, of course, things moved on to land. Okay, so this is one example of that blue-green bacteria here. It's called Oscillatoria because the DNA looks like it oscillates. It's spirally, kind of like how a fan can oscillate back and forth, so that's where it gets its name from. Okay, so just remember that bacteria's job is photosynthesis or decomposing. They're classified by their shape first, and they're very important parts of the ocean. So what I'd like for y'all to do is I have a web quest for you on bacteria, marine bacteria specifically, so it'll give you more details about them. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you.